Welcome to the Canon in 5. We take the most reputable books in history and distill them for you. Every video covers one chapter, explained in simple words through 5 key points. Here is what you need to know from today's reading. Today, we're diving into something super fascinating, the neurobiology of what makes you, well, you. We're going to break down the science behind feeling whole and authentic.
5. That's it. We're boiling this whole complex topic down into 5 core ideas that I promise will change the way you think about yourself.
All right, point 1. This is all about the quest for a coherent self. Let's be real, it's a fundamental human desire, right? That feeling of having it all together, of being consistent, even when life is throwing a million different things at you. So, I want you to ask yourself this. Who are you really? It seems like such a simple question, but the answer, it's usually anything but. You know, you're a friend, a professional, you have hobbies, you have dreams, and sometimes it feels like all those parts are pulling you in different directions. This is where that search for a coherent self really kicks off.
And psychologists have a name for this whole journey. They call it integrative processes. It's basically our brain's built-in drive to take all these different threads of our lives, our memories, our values, our goals, and weave them into a single, cohesive story. It's the process of becoming a unified, whole person.
And you know, this is not some newfangled idea. It's been around for ages. I mean, you've got Freud back in 1927 talking about the synthetic function of the ego. Then Carl Rogers in the 50s with his fully functioning individual. So yeah, this has been a central piece of the psychology puzzle for a long, long time.
Okay, here's a really cool way to think about it. Neuroscientists talk about something called the binding problem. It's how your brain takes color, shape, and motion and instantly combines them so you see a bouncing red ball, not just a collection of features. Well, you can think of these integrative processes as the brain's binding problem, but for your personality. It's about uniting all your different experiences into one seamless sense of who you are.
And this quote from Ryan and Deci just nails it. Self-determination, as it turns out, is ultimately a problem of integration. Wow. So, feeling in control of your life, being self-determined, it all comes down to how well you've managed to weave all those different parts of yourself together.
Which brings us to point 2. Integration is basically your superpower. I mean, what are the actual real-world benefits of doing all this hard internal work? Well, it turns out they're huge.
So, what's the fuel for this superpower? It comes from satisfying 3 basic psychological needs. You need to feel autonomy, like you're the author of your own story. You need competence, that feeling of being effective, and you need relatedness, feeling deeply connected to other people. When those 3 things are in place, you're giving your brain everything it needs to build a strong, integrated self.
And you can really see the difference it makes. On one hand, you have the integrated self, autonomous, coherent, not defensive, really aware. But on the other side, the non-integrated self feels controlled, conflicted, and always on the defensive. So you can see how nurturing this integration isn't just some abstract goal, it's a direct investment in your own mental health.
Okay, so we've talked about the what and the why of integration. Now for the really cool part. Point 3. Let's peek inside the integrated brain. How does our biology actually pull this off? It's time to get into the neuroscience.
And our main character in this story is a part of the brain called the medial prefrontal cortex, or MPFC for short. It's located right behind your forehead, and you can think of it as the brain's central hub for self-reflection. It's where you think about your values, your personality, and who you really are.
So, why the MPFC? What makes it so special? Well, for one, in humans, it's proportionately huge. It's also packed with an incredible density of connections. And maybe most importantly, it's linked to all these other major brain regions. It's basically built for the job of integration. It's like the grand central station of your sense of self.
All right, so the MPFC is our key player. But how do we know it's doing all this stuff? That brings us to point 4. Let's look at your brain in action. We're going to dive into some really clever experiments that show us what's happening in there.
First up, a question we all face. How does your brain handle a really tough choice? You know, the kind of decision that says something about who you are and what you value. How does an integrated brain step up to that challenge?
So here's what researchers did. It's a pretty neat setup. First, they had people rate how satisfied they'd be in a bunch of different jobs. Then, they put them in a brain scanner and gave them choices. Some were high conflict, like choosing between dancer and chemist if you rated both really highly. Others were low conflict, an easy choice. And all the while, they were watching the MPFC.
And the results were just fascinating. For people who were less integrated, their MPFC activity was pretty much the same for both easy and hard choices. But for the highly integrated people, their MPFC lit up like a Christmas tree, but only for the hard choices. It's like they were saving their self-reflection resources for the moments that truly mattered. So efficient. Okay, next experiment. Let's think about another huge part of having a coherent self, connecting who you were in the past with who you are now and who you're going to be in the future. How does the brain build that bridge across time?
What the scientists found here was incredible. In less integrated people, their MPFC got really active when they thought about their present self, but it was pretty quiet for their past or future selves. It's almost like their brain treated those versions of them as strangers. But for the more integrated individuals, the NPFC was consistently fired up when judging their past, present, and future selves. It's the neural signature of a unified life story.
This brings us to our fifth and final point, and it's a really important nuance. Is the self really located in just one spot in the brain? The answer is a bit more complex. The MPFC is a superstar for sure, but the full story is much more of a team effort.
Yeah, the modern view is that the brain forms these things called process-specific alliances, or PSAs. Just think of them as small, flexible teams of different brain regions that get together to perform a specific job, like making a value-based decision or remembering a personal memory.
And this quote really captures it perfectly. A PSA is a small group of brain regions working together, rapidly assembled and rapidly disassembled when no longer needed. So it's not a permanent structure. It's flexible, it's efficient. These brain teams assemble, do their job, and then disband. The MPFC might be the team captain, but it always needs its teammates.
So, the big takeaway here is this. Your self isn't some single CEO sitting in a corner office in your brain. It's a much more dynamic, active process. It's carried out by a whole series of expert teams that your brain assembles on demand whenever you need them to navigate the world.
And that leaves us with one final, and I think really empowering question. If your integrated self is built by this amazing teamwork inside your brain, how can you be a better team captain? How can you create the conditions for those teams to succeed by fostering your own autonomy, competence, and relatedness to help them work together and build a more coherent, authentic you?